The weight of silence at the library smelled of old paper and forgotten dreams. Thomas sat in his usual corner chair, watching dust particles dance in the afternoon sunlight that streamed through the tall windows. At 73, he had grown accustomed to the quiet. His weathered hands rested on a worn leather journal, the same one he had carried for 30 years, but never quite knew how to fill. The young librarian, Sarah, moved between the shelves with practiced silence. She had worked here for 3 years, and in all that time, Thomas had never spoken more than a polite thank you when she helped him find a book. He was simply the elderly man who came every Tuesday and Thursday, always sitting in the same spot, always leaving just before closing time. Thomas opened his journal to a blank page, as he had done countless times before. The pen felt heavy in his fingers. He had so much to say, so many stories locked away in the chambers of his heart, yet the words never seemed to find their way to paper. His late wife Margaret used to tease him about this. "You talk to the roses in our garden more than you talk to people," she would say, laughing as she watched him tend to their small backyard sanctuary. That was before the accident, before the long months in the hospital, before the funeral, where he stood silent while others shared their memories of Margaret, while he kept his most precious moments locked away, too sacred to speak aloud. Now, 2 years later, the silence had become a companion. It followed him from his empty house to the grocery store, from the doctor's office to this library chair. People seemed to accept his quiet nature, perhaps thinking it was simply the way of old men. But Thomas knew better. The silence wasn't natural. It was a choice he made each morning when he looked in the mirror and decided, once again, that his thoughts weren't worth sharing. Today felt different, though. There was an urgency in his chest, a restlessness that made his usual routine feel suddenly insufficient. He watched Sarah organize returned books on a nearby cart, her movements efficient but gentle, and found himself wondering about her life. Did she have dreams beyond these walls? Did she ever feel the weight of words left unspoken? As if sensing his gaze, Sarah looked up and offered a small smile. For a moment, Thomas considered speaking, not just the polite exchange they usually shared, but something real, something that mattered. Instead, he nodded and returned his attention to the blank page before him. The pen trembled slightly in his grip as he began to write. Not the profound wisdom he thought he should share, but something simpler. Today, realize that silence isn't golden when it becomes a prison. He paused, surprised by his own words. They seemed to flow from somewhere deep inside, a place that had been waiting patiently for acknowledgement. He continued writing, "I have spent 2 years believing that my grief was too sad.